Hi, quick note before we start. This episode talks about eating disorders, body image, and mental health in detail. If you or anyone you know is struggling, you are not alone. In Australia, Butterfly Foundation's National Helpline is there every single day of the year. You can find them on 1800 334 673 for anyone dealing with an eating disorder or body image struggles. You can also reach them online at butterfly.org.au. If it's your mental health more broadly, Lifeline is on 131114 24 hours a day. Okay, let's get into today's episode.
The Anita Podcast.
Hi, it's Anita, and welcome to this Culture Deep Dive episode of the Anita Podcast. This week, Ariana Grande's team confirmed she's stepping back from public life once her tour wraps, after months and months, maybe even years of people picking apart her body online. And then I saw an op-ed by my friend Natasha about what happened to her when she was suffering in the public eye. One of them has millions of people picking her apart online, while the other had almost nobody looking at her at all while she was disappearing in front of a whole TV crew week after week and not one person said a word. So one had too much noise from the public and the other total silence. By the end of this episode, I want you to understand why neither one is care. Now, before we keep going, it's important to acknowledge what an eating disorder actually is. According to the Butterfly Foundation, eating disorders are serious mental illnesses. This means it's not a lifestyle choice, not a phase, not something you can see just by looking at someone's body. Over 1.1 million Australians are living with one right now. Less than a third of them are actually getting any treatment or support. It can show up as anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder, and a few other forms that don't get talked about as much. And they affect people of every age, gender, body size, and background. Now, eating disorders have a strong genetic component, meaning genes, biology, and environment all work together. Twin and family studies show that roughly 40% to 60% of the risk for developing an eating disorder comes from inherited genetic factors. Social pressures, strict dieting, stress, trauma, and body image ideals in society help trigger these genetic risks. Having a family history or specific gene markers increases the risk, but it doesn't mean a person will definitely develop an eating disorder. So, when we're talking about Ariana, or when you're hearing my interview with Natasha, keep that in mind. Before we get into Ariana Grande and before I introduce you to Natasha Lee, whose story is genuinely gut-wrenching, I want to tell you about my own history with weight. I have been yo-yo dieting since I can remember. In fact, when I hit puberty, it was all over for me and my weight. When I was in high school, girls were eating a single piece of fudge a day and calling it their calories. We'd sit around at parties, voicing concern for each other's welfare, while privately finding our own unhealthy ways to get skinny. Then there were the boys and the men. The boys wouldn't even look at me at parties, and men wouldn't look at me at clubs. I was always the fat friend. I learned early on that you had to be skinny to get positive male attention. To this day, I look in the mirror and I see one thing. Then somebody takes a photo of me or a video and I'll edit it to make myself look smaller. My mum was a ballerina for 30 years. At her peak, she ate an apple a day. When she was pregnant with me, she weighed 45 kilos. Weight has always been something my family talked about openly. You've put on weight. You ballooned when you hit puberty. You look like a stuffed sausage in that dress. All things that have been said straight to my face. You were praised for losing weight, for being skinny, even though we're Europeans. We're built with curves in our genetics. In a lot of European and Filipino households, which is my family's background, commenting on someone's body isn't rude. It's just what you do. In fact, my cousins and I used to joke about it. My abuela would look at us and say we were too skinny, and we'd laugh and take it as the biggest compliment ever. I even remember my abuela saying to me, "Oh, good, you've kept the weight off." Now, this is one of my most favorite people in the entire world saying these things to me, so you can imagine how that made me feel. I also remember having a conversation with someone at work once, and I can't remember what the conversation was about, but I said, "At least I'm funny." And she replied to me, "No one wants to be the funny fat friend." I lost 23 kilos after that. And finally, one of my biggest regrets ever in the thick of losing that weight was saying out loud, "I weigh less than my sister right now. How cool." She was in a hospital bed fighting cancer. That's how unhealthy my brain has been about weight. That is the level we're talking about. I'm actually on Ozempic now, and I'm not afraid to say that out loud. But during my mental health breakdown, I stopped eating well, stopped exercising, and I put on a lot of weight. Add genetics into that, I'm predisposed to high cholesterol and diabetes, and I became a pre-diabetic. So when I was prescribed Ozempic for that reason, I was actually quietly relieved. And yes, part of that relief was knowing that it would help with the weight loss too. But I get so angry when people write it off as just a vanity drug. It's not. For me, it's managing a genetic predisposition. And I'm paying $160 a month for it, getting looks from pharmacists, getting opinions from strangers, when it should just be on the PBS for people with my exact genetic profile. But I digress. So when I sit here talking about Ariana and her body being picked apart online, or a teenage actor slowly starving on a TV set, I'm not talking about it from a distance. I am talking about it from lived experience. I want to start with the reason why I'm doing this episode. Ariana Grande. At the end of July, she dropped the video for her new single, Petal. And within days, the conversation wasn't about the song anymore. It was about her body. Fans, commentators, entire group chats, all speculating about what was wrong with Ariana Grande. Then actress and women's health advocate Jameela Jamil weighed in publicly, and it went from the undercurrents of social media to international headlines. She said, and I'm going to quote this word for word, that Ariana is possibly dying right in front of us. She called the styling in the Petal video deliberate, accusing Ariana's team of glamorizing an image she considers dangerous for the singer's young fan base. Jameela called it a trolley problem. If she says nothing, an image she genuinely believes is harmful gets normalized to millions and millions of impressionable fans. If she says something, she risks becoming one more stranger dissecting a woman's body in public, which is the exact behavior Ariana has been begging people to stop for 3 years. Days later, Ariana's team confirmed she's stepping back from public life once her tour wraps. Her rep put it down to what they called endless ongoing public scrutiny. She also pulled out of a major stage commitment in London with Jonathan Bailey. Then Ariana got on stage in Chicago and told the crowd, in her own words, that the decision wasn't reactive, that it had been planned quietly a long time ago from what she's called a thoughtful and empowered place.
I would like to just clear the air about a few things if that's okay. All right. I'll keep it short, I promise. So basically, the announcement that was made yesterday was not a reactive or impulsive thing. It is something that I had decided. It's a plan that I had quietly made a long time ago, and it's a decision that was made from a thoughtful and empowered place. And I want you to know that many things can be true at the same time. I want to share this because I heard that my fans... Wait, hold on. I heard that my fans were worried that negativity was ruining things for me. But I just have to say, that could not be more the full opposite. I promise you, this is not what that is. And I just want to be very, very clear. Nothing has been ruined. Multiple things can be true at the same time. Boundaries can need to be set. After many years of and also, this can be and will continue to be the greatest experience of my professional and creative life. And absolutely nothing is getting in the way of that or will get in the way of that. So I just wanted to make that quite plain. No matter what noises exist out there, nothing will ever be able to distort my reality or be more real to me or louder to me than this love that we share in this room. Or than how it feels to make art with the people that I love and respect. Absolutely nothing will change that or distort that for me. And I want you to know that you are for me. Because that's all that I can. I love you, and this is what I will always take with me and carry with me, because the rest of that shit is not mine to carry, so I don't carry it. And I want you to know that for me. I needed to get out here and differentiate that from my truth for you all, because I love you, and this tour has been the most healing, beautiful, corrective, magnificent, special experience of my life, and so has putting out Pedal. It's been extraordinary. I need you to know. Yeah, that felt good. Okay, thank you very much for letting me chime in.
Ariana has said multiple times, going back many, many years, that people cannot look at a body and diagnose what's happening on the inside. And there's real science behind that. Experts will tell you eating disorders happen across every body size. Weight can shift because of illness, medication, grief, stress, 100 things that have nothing to do with what people assume when they see a thinner frame on a red carpet. But there's also something honest in what Jamila said. We are watching something happen in real time, collectively, and calling it just speculation. It doesn't make the discomfort go away. Concern and cruelty can look identical from the outside. That's the whole trap. So which is it? Overreach or an actual warning sign that everyone's too scared to name because we've all been trained that commenting on a woman's body is the worst thing you can do? I don't think there's a clean answer yet. Now, I want to take you somewhere completely different. A teenage girl on an Australian TV set in the early 2000s disappearing in plain sight. My guest today is Natasha Lee, whom we will meet a little later on. She was 14 when she was cast on Always Greener. A few years ago, she found Polaroids from that time and started writing about what was actually happening behind them. At the time of the photos, she was deep into an eating disorder, serious enough that within weeks, she was hospitalised for 2 whole months. She says that everyone around her knew. Cast, crew, wardrobe, makeup, nobody pulled her aside. Remember, this is how she sees it, and other people may have different recollections of this. Now, nobody pulled her aside. Nobody asked if she was okay. In fact, one castmate even mocked her weight publicly at lunch in front of everyone and never apologised. Eventually, someone did notice enough to say something, but they didn't go to Natasha. They didn't go to her mum. They went up the chain to the producers, and instead of care, what came back down was a new clause in her contract: lose weight during a filming block and she'd be fired. Insane. An industry that was watching her closely enough to write a weight clause into a teenager's contract, but not closely enough to ask if she needed help. That's a child disappearing while dozens and dozens and dozens of adults who called themselves a TV family said absolutely nothing. With Ariana, it's not that too many people are watching her. It's that everyone has a loud opinion on her body, and none of us actually know what's happening except her close circle of friends. Should we be screaming about her weight in the comments? Should we be sitting there diagnosing a stranger off a music video? We don't know her. We just keep talking like we do. Natasha's world had eyes everywhere, and every single one of them turned the other way. This is the same failure of care, just on opposite sides of the spectrum. One is called concern, loud everywhere, impossible to escape. The other is professionalism, silent and just as impossible to escape if you were the one in the inside. So what's the way forward? As you'll hear with Natasha, it's really not about picking a side between noise and silence. Most of us will never get near Ariana Grande to check in on her directly, and that's fine. That's not actually the job here. The job that we can do is what we can do with the people that are in reach of us. Stop treating strangers' bodies as content. Educate the next generation on how to actually treat their own bodies and how not to comment on somebody else's. Or the fact that there's usually a reason behind why someone looks the way that they look, one you can't see from the outside. And still, ask if someone's okay. Look, I don't have the right answer here, and when we talk to Natasha, she doesn't either. But if there's one thing I'd push, it's educate, educate, educate. Because to me, that is the whole point of putting these two stories next to each other. Both extremes represent a failure of care. Too much noise doesn't help Ariana, and total silence didn't help Natasha either. Neither one is actually looking after the person at the centre of it. My guest today is Natasha Lee. For the last 20 plus years, Tash has been a journalist. She started at 16 as an editorial assistant at the Daily Telegraph, did her cadetship at 2SM, and built out from there across digital and TV. She's worked at Kiss FM, at Yahoo Australia, and she's now an editor at Vinyl Media. But before any of that, from 2001 to 2003, Natasha played Kimberly Taylor on Always Greener, one of the biggest shows in the country at the time. This one's also really personal for me too, because Tash and I actually did drama together in Year 6 at Sydney's North Primary Drama Ensemble. I remember watching her on Always Greener and being so proud of her. I had no idea what she was actually living through at the time. This is a raw and honest chat that I don't even think I've had with Tash myself until now. Please welcome to the Anita podcast, Natasha Lee. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. I can't believe we haven't done this sooner, to be honest.
It's wild, isn't it? Thank you, my old drama school friend.
You know, I'm actually so glad that, was it a couple months ago that I sent you that photo and you unlocked all these memories of actually doing drama, because I remember the first time that I'd seen you after all these years and I was like, do you remember how we did drama together? And you were like, I have no recollection of that at all. And I was like, no, but it was like the highlight of my life.
It's amazing. It's amazing what disassociation can do and how you lock away memories. But that was also one of the best times of my life too. I just have a bad memory and half of those people I don't remember if I would see them on the street. But it was so sweet. And there we were in our little costume. So for anyone listening, bit of a backstory, we both did drama and we got into kind of it was was it
Sydney's North Primary Drama Ensemble. #
That's right.
Never forget.
That's right. That's right. So, all the theatre kids who were the best at their school got into this drama group and we'd meet there every Tuesday and then we put on a performance and it's like being in a room with 30 very keen theatre kids who were like, how old were we?
We were 12 because we were in Year
12.
6. 12 and not even 13, we were 12 because that was amazing. And it was at Warrawee Public School. I will
That's
never
right.
forget in the hall.
That's
because
right.
I remember Mrs. Ross, but I don't remember the other drama teacher.
Mrs. Ross had the red hair, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Everyone remembers Mrs. Ross.
Yes.
But do you know Benita, shout out to Benita, who is currently living their dream in New York on Broadway, directing on Broadway. Benita was Benita was with us at drama and also was at school with me, primary school, but Benita. And there was a Benita, Marita, Danica, Anita.
Yes, I remember Danica and it was good fun. It was really good fun.
But do you know, this is a really good segue actually, because what is wild to me is that, I don't know if you remember this, but I remember when you got onto Always Greener and it was, you were the success story from our drama class and immediately, I think it was 1 to 2 years later, you were on Always Greener and I saw you at Carol's in the Domain and I ran up to you and I was so excited to see you and I was like, oh my God, we're so proud of you, etc., etc. But unbeknownst to me, I've got goosebumps even thinking about it, that we had no idea. And I remember slipping you my number again and going, please call me. And you never did. And I took it so personally. It's all right. I'm over it now. But we had no idea you were going through such a tumultuous time until maybe a couple of years ago when you told your story. So that is what we want to chat about today.
Firstly, I am so sorry that I didn't call back, but you are
Rude.
right. I know, right? What a bitch. The rumors are true, but that's exactly right. There was just a lot going on, and it was very much me siloing myself while I was suffering and really descending into a very serious eating disorder.
So can you explain how this happened? Start from the beginning.
I knew that it sort of started, it's really the analogy of the frog in hot water. And it really kicked off, it was at a lunch, and a family member said to me, and I'll preface this by saying I was, when I was younger, quite chubby, but the baby fat obviously fell off as I grew up and it wasn't an issue anymore. But it was always sort of an issue for this one family member who would make comments, and it was a very innocuous thing, which shows you that you never really do know what's going through someone's mind, or especially with young girls, what is okay to say and what is not okay to say. But it was just, you should substitute white rice for brown rice because there's less carbs. And then I found out that's how I discovered about the Atkins diet. And it really just rolled on from there. I then cut carbs and the weight started to fall off, and the reactions around were quite positive at first. And so it's an intoxicating kind of thing to be getting praise as you are getting smaller. And there is a really fine line. And the problem is you don't know where that line is when it crosses over from just a normal weight loss. Actually, there is no normal weight loss for a child. Sorry.
How old were you?
14. And it crossed over very quickly where I obviously was in this situation in a TV show. And I also want to preface by saying my parents were not showbiz parents, not pushy parents. My mum is quite a personality, but she never forced me into acting or anything like that. This is a show I wanted to do. And I would argue that most parents, if their child got on a TV show, that you would be thrilled, right? Amazing. This is their dream. They want to act. Amazing. So there was no pushing to be in that role. And I want to make it clear. And I also want to make it clear, this is my story and my recollections of the time. And obviously people around me, it might be different. What did the Queen say? Recollections may vary. But gradually being in a space where you're 14 years old and there are adults all around you, and I'm not going to school at that stage, right? I'm being homeschooled, and you're feeling quite isolated. There's really no one around you that you can kind of talk to. I was the youngest on set, and so the second youngest was 20. Now, that wouldn't really be that much of an age difference. However, 20-year-olds don't want to hang out with 14-year-olds. And, there was really no, I guess, and this isn't me putting the blame on anyone, but there was no sort of outward, I guess, incentive or even appearance to sort of, bring me into the fold in some way, shape or form. There were the home and away kids across the studio, right? So, Christy Hayes and I, we're still good mates. And so I knew her, but they weren't always on set. So I was on set sort of quite alone and quite isolated. And so when you're in that environment, and obviously the weight's coming down, and I guess my personality as well, it just naturally, I guess, sort of just enfolded into each other, right? I then realized, okay, well, I'm losing weight. People are commenting. People are saying that's great. I'm fitting into all these clothes. I'm looking like these women who are beautiful. And I've spoken before, there was a very small actress on set who would regularly talk about how small she was and how she could eat everything she wanted and how she had the body that she spoke about her audition and said during her audition, one of the casting agents said, "Oh, you have the ideal body that a gay man would want."
Oh my God.
So small. And so when you're hearing those things as a 14-year-old and you're in an environment like that, you internalize it because you can't really talk to anyone and you don't want to be a problem, right? So the weight then fell off very, very, very quickly. I remember one time I was walking up with my dad. This is how quickly it fell off. I was walking up the road with my dad, And somebody came out and said, I saw your sister the other day. And I said, I don't have a sister. The weight had fallen so fast. And I mean, like, it was a matter of like a month or 2 months. It had just dropped off, right? And then it suddenly, I think, on set became noticeable. Nobody said anything. Nobody spoke to me about it. Camden was very cold. We filmed in Camden. I would be freezing. I would be shivering. My lips would go blue. And yeah, it was just not. Again, I look back and I think, wasn't there somebody there who could have come up afterwards and just said, hey, are you okay? Do you want to chat? Do you want to come in? Do you want like a cup of tea or a hot chocolate or something? Or let's go for a walk or just something. There was nothing like that. So that makes you feel even more isolated and alone. And then eventually remember I'm 14 at the time, pulled into a room, spoken to, we noticed this is happening. Again, it's a very frightening thing for a 14-year-old to be in a room alone with an adult talking about work.
Your parents weren't even there?
They were. Well, my mum was there, yeah, but she didn't come in. It was decided it would just be me.
Sorry, what?
Yeah. And then eventually filming break happened and I went to hospital. It was, I was sort of coerced or coaxed into going to hospital just for a checkup. And then once I was there, they don't let you leave because my weight had gotten down to 34 kilos and my heart rate was so low that they said if I hadn't have come in, I would have suffered a cardiac arrest that day. And my heart still is damaged from that time. And amazingly, the only thing actually the show did do was during the time they decided to hire me a trainer, an exercise trainer, because they thought that might help if there's body issues. I could talk to the trainer and so forth. Still nothing was ever mentioned about what was going on.
No counsellors, nothing. They never provided that.
No. That was my parents did all that. My parents looked after all that. But there was even just a chat. But they hired a trainer, and so I'd go to this trainer, which was still a strange thing to do. And I was actually due to go to that trainer that day when I got taken to hospital. Yeah.
Imagine if you'd done exercise.
Yeah. That's why when I go back to it and I think about it, there were so many of those little moments where you think it got like the string or the ribbon had gotten so pulled and so tight. It was right at that moment that if there wasn't an intervention or something hadn't intervened, it would have just snapped. So I was very, very lucky.
In your opinion, looking back, why do you think no one said anything to you?
I could be very bullish here and say because nobody cared, and that's certainly how it felt at the time, and certainly now, time is meant to be, a great healer, or at least, hindsight is 20/20 vision. You're meant to have a look at the situation a lot better. However, I don't think I've been afforded that because I still can't look at it in any different light. I'm going to guess that it's really, I think, as simple as people not wanting to get involved. And if you involve yourself, then you are involved. And apathy is a brilliant excuse for ignorance and for a lack of empathy.
Do you think it was a sign of the times that they didn't say anything and they didn't want to get involved? They weren't educated enough?
It's hard to know because bringing in, and again, I'm in no way, shape or form comparing myself in any way to Ariana Grande, but there are, again, there are similarities, like pockets of similarities in that understanding. And again, I'm not diagnosing her and I would never, and anyone who does is foolish to do that. But based on sort of the evidence we have with a photograph, I think we can make somewhat of an educated guess, and I'm happy to wear that if I am wrong. Looking at now that we're still having this conversation shows that perhaps it's not so much just a sign of the times. Perhaps it's just a sign of the way people interact with it. When I mean it, I mean seeing somebody who might be in distress and not knowing what to say or not really wanting to say anything or just going, well, it's not my problem, so I don't really care. But understanding that these instances are they have ripple effects. It might not affect you, but it could affect your best friend's daughter in 10 years' time. So don't you want to perhaps have some sort of good influence in saying something? And I think the conversation, it gets so we get so caught up in not wanting to offend people and worrying about, oh, but we shouldn't comment on women's bodies. And if we just intellectualize it a little bit and understand there is a real difference between commenting on a woman's body and commenting on somebody who is clearly unwell and reaching out and going, do you want help? Isn't that what being a human is? This is why I find the argument or the discussion so incredulous. It seems we've lost humanity. We've lost the ability to understand what humanity is or being a good person is because we're so bogged down with worrying about offending people or saying the wrong thing. Whereas I think people who are suffering, at least at the time, I absolutely would have been able to tell the difference.
Yeah. You would have absolutely loved people just to put their arm around you and care for you.
I actually did have one director who was very nice. And so it's inappropriate of me to say that it was no one. There was one director and I became friends with him and his family. And he called me while I was in hospital. And it wasn't much to talk about. It was just, how are you going? That's all I needed. And I never, ever see, I'm talking about it now. It struck such a chord with me to go, oh my God, I'm not, like, they didn't forget me.
Because how lonely for a 14-year-old. You must have felt so lonely in that room, that hospital room.
And, the treatment for eating disorder patients, particularly anorexia patients, is very lonely. Our phones are taken off us. We are not allowed to see our family. We're allowed to see our family for 2 hours a day. We're allowed 2 phone calls a day. It's a system of deprivation in a way to almost make you eat again, as if we're doing this by choice. So that whole experience in itself was really traumatic, but very, very lonely. And sharing a room with other eating disorder patients is probably not a good idea, like putting a bunch of like robbers in a room. We're all like scheming.
Telling each other how to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. And were all these girls your age as well?
Yeah, no, they were all my age. We were all very lucky. We used to be told that we were lucky we made it in before we turned 16, because if we were 16, we would have then gone into the larger hospital and that would have been even worse. I'm still friends with one of the girls that I was in there with. She's got 2 beautiful daughters. She's, very... I hate the word healthy because that can also be misconstrued, but she is, I guess, thriving. But we do talk about it, and it's for her as well. It continues to be one of the most awful experiences of her life being in there, which again shows the misunderstanding of what the disorder is and what people who are suffering need. It's again, any other illness, people are kind and people will talk and people will at least show empathy. But for something like this, it seems there's silence surrounding it. There's a lot of cruelty and there's a lot of, well, just eat. We just eat. And the weight loss is the symptom, is only the symptom of what's going on internally.
Absolutely.
It's a psychological illness, right? By the time you can see the weight loss, the illness has taken hold.
Have you done any research into how they do it now, how they treat this disease now?
I haven't done a lot of research. Because sometimes I find going back into it can be really hard. Like making a decision to write something like this is a decision made. I thought about it for a while to go back into it. I do think it has changed. I do think there is more understanding around it. I know that there is research, and I was a participant in it that showed anorexia can be found in your DNA. Like it can be hereditary. Yeah, there are genes. So I was, obviously glad and happy to help out with that. So knowing that, I do hope that is going to change the point of view that this is a character thing, or you've been, a naughty girl to try and get your own way type thing.
So that's what they said to you. They said that you're being naughty.
No, but it was, it's the feeling, it's this feeling of,
I've done a bad thing. It's my fault.
I've done a bad thing. Yeah. What have I done that's so bad that I'm being, treated this way, or, why are they angry with me? And I was left one night, I had a nasal gastric tube, which I had to have, and that was put in, I was awake for that. And I also would have food overnight because I wasn't gaining weight quickly enough. And I remember the nurses I remember it so well. I was sitting on my bed and I really had to go to the bathroom. You know, I'd had a liter of, it's called Ensure. It's like Sustagen pumped in overnight, and I really had to go to the bathroom. And the nurse was doing her rounds, and I called out to her and I said, please, can you unhook me? I really need to go to the bathroom. And, you know, they had to ask with all the eating disorder patients, everything had to be checked. Why are they going? You know, if we were in the bathroom more than 10 minutes, we'd get the door opened on us, couldn't lock the doors. And I heard them in the hall going, no, she doesn't want to go to the bathroom. She just wants to fix herself up before breakfast. And so right. And so I ended up wetting the bed because I had to go to the bathroom. And it's that, what other patient, that wouldn't happen to another patient. It wouldn't happen to another child. And so you end up becoming more damaged in a different way from an experience like that.
When you say that an eating disorder is genetic, are we talking about it's a mental health, I don't want to eat, I need to be skinny, or it's body dysmorphia? Because I'm just really not quite understanding what is genetic.
I can't give you the rundown on it. I do know that they found there is something in the genes that will make you predisposition to developing it. And you've got to remember, an eating disorder it's a form of control, especially when a lot is whirling around you and you can't control things. It's a way of controlling that. And yeah, there are going to be girls who are more susceptible to body image stuff, obviously, given both of us are in that acting world, of course. It's still, something that, I'm sure you think about, I think about, but there's a line, right? There's that normalcy where you go, I think about it, but it doesn't overwhelm me. And then, and I know your question is, but what's that tipping point where you go over? And I don't know what that is, but there is a particular, I guess, and I could be completely wrong, but from my understanding, there is a particular hereditary sort of element that will show that you will be someone who will tip over.
That does make sense. It's just like having bipolar, like genetic bipolar disposition. You could have bipolar.
Anorexia is the most dangerous psychological disorder. It has the highest fatality rate. And it is knowing that as well should spur people on to, number one, understand it a little bit better, but also perhaps to talk about it a bit more openly, and again to treat it a bit differently, because it never really goes away. You're never really quote unquote cured. It's always there. It's always sort of sitting dormant in your brain, and you have to. I still have to catch myself at times and just go, we're not doing that. And that will be if I'm feeling overly stressed, right? I can feel that it's a type of coping mechanism, and that type of coping mechanism, and this might explain it too, may emerge differently in other people. So that's my coping mechanism, and it's something that's unhealthy and it's not constructive, but it's, that maybe that sort of explains it a bit better, I guess, and how it can manifest in different ways in different people.
Absolutely. And you've got 2 daughters. What are you teaching them and educating them surrounding eating disorders or surrounding body image?
I'm terrified, quietly terrified about it. We don't ever use the word fat in the house, because I feel that's a word that can be manipulated really easily, and it can be used as a disparaging term. So we don't use that in the house. We never talk about weight. And the only thing I'll ever say is look at our big, beautiful tummies, and we'll have, tummy competitions, and rightly or wrongly, I'm not sure. There's no guidebook for this, but at least I'm trying to look at it in a way that perhaps maybe when I was younger, that may have helped. It may have helped me look at my body differently. Terrifies me because my 9-year-old did ask me the other day, she didn't want me to order her a lunch order because somebody at school said, if you eat this every day, you'll get fat. And so she was worried about it. But, I tried to explain it to her in a way that your body knows what it's doing. Your body you have genes in your body and you have cells in your body, and they know exactly what to do. And there's nothing you can do that's going to change that. You just have to, make sure that you eat enough so that you can run around and do gymnastics, and trying to explain it in a way that's, you know what I mean? It's a hard thing to explain, but trying to explain it in a way where you're turning the conversation around from how you look to how you feel. And if you feel good and energized and happy, and then that's all that really matters. And your body will take care of the rest. That's not for you to worry about. You just have to make sure you're feeling okay. And then perhaps that will help. But I'm terrified.
That's all you can do, though. And I'm so sorry you're terrified because, I mean, I've got teenagers in our household and sometimes it's just the things that teenagers say to each other and kids say to each other is so concerning, and you can't stop that. You cannot control anything outside of your own house and what is said. And, you know, I even recently had someone say to me, "You've got so many wrinkles," and now I'm like doing this major face regime. And I'm like, and this was a kid. Yeah.
You've got a what?
Yeah. I mean, and it's hard because I'm, 40 and it's like, and my weight, I've always struggled with my weight my entire life. So anyone ever, I had somebody very close to me say that I had really fat thighs and I ended up losing 23 kilos because of it. Like, people don't understand the power of the words, which kind of brings me to the Ariana Grande of it all. You know, one thing that has been the most concerning, I believe, in the discourse is that the people are just outright, and you were very careful not to diagnose her, outright going, she's got an eating disorder, she's so unhealthy, she's dying even. And I just wonder, like, if that was being said about you and nothing, at volume, as somebody who went through that, how do you think that would affect you?
Let me pick you up again and say, I'm so sorry that you went through that. And I think it's also a bit of a testament to how empathetic you are with this topic and how understanding, but it's also so sad and indicative of how many women have a story like that. And I will say I was actually somebody who said, this is a woman who is really dying before our very eyes. And I will stand by that because I really do think watching her, there are certain bodily cues as well with the bones, and it was something that we would, I guess, compare in hospital, and the collarbones and your chest bones. And so for me, I it's very hard because I look at it in a different light,
of course,
in that respect. But I think the discourse is, look, the internet is a really hard place. And a lot of, and it's all online, right? You know, it's a very hard place to be. And for her, I cannot imagine how unbelievably, I would even suggest maybe boxed in she might feel when the whole world is coming at you and there's a wave of those emotions. And I would hope that people around her are looking after her at this stage and protecting her, and not looking at the people making comments, educated comments, I'll say, and being angry, but seeing it for what it is, people who care. I think there's always going to be idiots out there who are going to make incredibly stupid comments, incredibly flippant, again, uneducated, unkind comments about the way someone looks. I've seen someone saying, Ozempic junkie, she's a walking corpse. Like, how is that helpful? That is
so unhelpful.
It's like, it's not helpful, and it's not funny, and it does nothing for the conversation. And how would you like it if that was your mother or your sister or your daughter out there?
Apart from anything, Ariana Grande has been through so much. It makes me really angry, actually, because it's like the amount of things that girl has been through. Like, we forget the bombing at her concert, her partner,
Mac Miller
died.
Yeah.
Like, she has been through it. And not to mention, she's been a child star like you. She was, and it doesn't matter whether you're a huge star like Ariana Grande on a grassroots television like you were, or even me with a podcast. Like, people, I believe, do not have a right to comment on other people's bodies. Like, be helpful.
I still get the comments, and you know that I've always, like, my lips have been big since I was little, right? And I still get people like right under videos, and it still upsets me. There was one the other day and it goes, wow, big accusations from fish lips over there. And I felt like writing back, and I felt like going, this is what I look like. What? What are you doing? Like, this is what I mean. It will send you fucking crazy
100%
to sit there and think about these comments. So I have no idea how people like Ariana Grande exist, and most of them aren't even more troubled, right? Like, and again, I'm not saying she's troubled. I'm putting a bit of a, a wide brushstroke over the culture and celebrity at large. Just how hard is it to just be kind, to clearly see another human being who is, looks unhealthy. That's not a healthy way to look. We don't know what the cause of it is, but it's not a healthy way to look. We're assuming because that's what we do as humans, and we like to close the loop, and we like to, pack everything up in a package and understand things. So just, again, I've said it, a few times, be intellectual about the conversation that you're having. If somebody is looking unwell, you can broach the subject. If you're unable to do that in a kind and empathetic way, then maybe society isn't for you. Maybe,
maybe shut up.
Maybe
shut
talking
the
is
fuck
not
up.
for you, find a different, but to sit there and just go, I don't know what to say, or she needs a steak. What does that do? That does nothing. That does nothing.
My thing at the moment is, and this is what this podcast is about, being too noisy about it or being too quiet about it. And obviously the happy medium is the thing in the middle. What do you want to see of society, particularly when you read those social media comments? What do you want to see change? What do you want to see change surrounding this discourse?
I would like to see people understand that, again, these are psychological disorders, so treat it as such, not as an appearance. The appearance is the symptom. It's not the actual problem. I would like to see people, especially within inner circles, be a little bit more forthcoming and a little bit more understanding and a little bit more empathetic to the people around them. It's like check in on your neighbor. Like, how hard is that? Just check in, right? And also this goes back to my girls, and I think something that would be very helpful, a little bit more education about things like this, and a little bit more education and understanding within schools, and that has a ripple effect. And for parents as well, for God's sakes, you do not need to worry about your kids' weights. Truly, if you take them to the doctor, do not make comments. For aunts and uncles and, grandmothers and grandparents, do not comment on a child's weight. As you said, it takes one comment. And these are children. You are a child until you are 18 years old. I don't care how grown up you might feel. You are still a child.
Absolutely. I can't even imagine. And now having social media and that absolute need to look a certain way and be a certain way and have a certain amount of followers. Like, it is actually, education starts with us, and education should start in the schools when it comes to this stuff. 100%.
And if somebody is telling you, if somebody is, somebody like yourself, or even myself, who has a bit of, a background in this, and we're telling you what works and what doesn't, listen. Just listen, okay? Because it's not coming from a place of anything other than just wanting the world to be a little bit more of a better place for those people who are maybe susceptible to that.
Thank you so much for your time today.
We'll go have that wine.
Yeah.
Several.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Anita podcast. And thank you so much to Natasha Lee for coming on and sharing her story. This wasn't an easy episode to make, and I'm sure it wasn't an easy listen either. If you or anyone you know is struggling, there's help listed in the show notes. If you're not already, please like and subscribe to the Anita podcast wherever you listen so you never miss an episode. And if you want more full episodes behind the scenes, follow me at hi.itsanita on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And remember, go be curious about someone. Hey, I'm adding something different here. Actually ask them how they're doing. You never know what you're going to find, and you never know what it might mean to them that you even asked at all. Bye.
The Anita Podcast.